Talked about story in the nation, the unrest in Ferguson, Missouri after the shooting of an unarmed black teen. This afternoon, the Missouri governor turned security in Ferguson over to the State Highway Patrol. Police are defending the use of tear gas and smoke bombs to repel demonstrators, even though that response has been heavily criticized. And President Obama, while on vacation in Massachusetts, called for calm from both sides. This evening, I spoke with a local security expert for another perspective on the last few days in Ferguson. Joining us now, Sam Hayes is a security expert who's been working in the field for a couple of decades now, most recently as a security contractor and leading the Caliber Training Group. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So when we're looking at these graphic pictures out of Ferguson and night after night after night of unrest, a true militarization of police is what people are saying. What do you make of that and how that may be stoking or escalating the violence there?
I think that when you have a militarization of the police, that the communities around tend to think that perhaps the police are gearing up for some kind of hostile takeover, or that they have an intention on using greater force than necessary to try to control, the community and the people in the community. If you have a police force that is respectable of the people that they serve, then you're not going to have a need for those kinds of things, because the people are going to take care of their neighborhoods, and they're going to respect the police and have, a good relationship with the police.
Today there was a shift in power. Now the State Highway Patrol, the captain there, Mr. Johnson, is going to be leading the efforts there. We heard from Congressman John Lewis earlier today calling for martial law and calling for the National Guard to move in. What do you think of that? Would that improve the situation?
I think that would absolutely escalate it beyond to a point to where, you would have significantly more people stepping in now to protest.
And why is that?
Well, because that's a show of force. I mean, that's a show of force. You're basically calling in the military. It feels like at that point you're suspending our constitutional rights to, voice our opinions about it and protest. And now you want to stifle and suppress us with even more force or even more strength in our homes, basically.
This is something that is deeply personal, and your personal experience as a young man led to your career path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've always hated bullies, and as a young man growing up in the Bronx, during the 70s and 80s, I actually witnessed firsthand a number of incidents of police brutality, even against some of my own family members. And I've been harassed, quite frequently by police officers, and it's personal to me because as an African-American man living in the United States, to know that I could walk out of my door and potentially be killed just because of the color of my skin by the people who were supposed to protect me is very scary.
When we reflect on what happened and what we're hearing happened that night with Michael Brown, the teenager who was unarmed and was killed by the unnamed police officer, what do you think of the initial encounter, what we're hearing about it at this point, and how police should have reacted differently?
As a firearms instructor, one of the things that I teach is that the use of lethal force, the introduction of a firearm into an engagement, is a tool of last resort. All right. I will tell you that police are trained to have multiple intermediate use of force options. They're trained to use pepper spray, expandable batons, tasers, even some defensive tactics, to where they have the ability and the options to be able to take command of a situation without having to resort to taking a human life. Particularly when you're talking about an unarmed individual. Some of the reports that I heard was that he was shot from as far as 35 feet away. If that's true, I can't in my mind imagine how an unarmed person would be a threat to an armed police officer at 35 feet away.
We have to wrap up the conversation now, and there's still so much that is unknown about what transpired that night this past weekend. I want to wrap up with what we can all learn, what we can learn as individuals, and what police forces around the country can learn from this.
I think what we all need to do is we all need to come together. We need to stop looking at it as being a black and white issue, and we need to look at it as being a human issue. We need to learn to respect one another, and we need to learn that there are boundaries with how we need to deal with one another.
Sam Hayes with Caliber Training Group. Good to have you here.
All right, thank
you. Good perspective. Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate it.